Good morning, afternoon, evening, night, midday, really early in the morning, um, wherever you are. Hope all is going well. We got great weather, hopefully. We can get some vitamin D. Oops, I'm not on the start part. Good. Let's go back a little bit. Architecture 530. Lecture 2 of Environmental Systems 1. Role of acoustics consulting, audio video consulting, and control programming and design in the architecture and design industry. This is where we'll touch on what this CTSD stands for, where you too can get one. You too can become a CTSD. Add some acronyms at the end of your name. Some people say it's important. So let's get started. Acoustic fields: academic, research, consulting and design, and manufacturing. We're going to focus on the acoustic side because that's where building acoustics, mechanical noise, mechanical isolation, noise isolation, that's where those realms live. So the academic setting is what we're doing right now. Learning about that, deciding, do you want to become a consultant? I didn't figure out until my fifth year of architectural engineering, when I'd studied 4 years of structures. I didn't even know this industry existed. So if you're not a fifth year, you're ahead of where I was in your position. So I took a class at KU. I'm a graduate from Kansas State University down the road, down 70. And I drove over here every Wednesday night to take class and partake in some pool and some schooners with friends from high school that were over here. Next portion is research. This is probably the largest percentage of where acoustics fits in industries. This is probably the biggest part of it. Consulting and design is the smallest portion, and then manufacturing. So between research and manufacturing, depending what part of acoustics, are we talking about submarines and underwater? Are we talking about scientific and government, NASA research? Or are we talking about manufacturing for Harley Davidson, Lamborghini, JBL? And we'll go over that. And then organizations: Acoustical Society of America, Audio Engineering Society, Infocom, which is now called AAVC, but was Infocom initially. National NSCA, NAB, and then NOM. So in the academic realm, we have a certificate here. The only other architecture program that I know in the U.S. that has acoustics is actually the book that I recommended, that Michael Ehrman teaches over at Valtech, Virginia Tech. The rest of them are under engineering, psychoacoustics, or physics, usually, and they're much more theoretical than what we have here. Research, you've got NASA, which we'll have an example next lecture on how we quantify objectively sound. Consulting and design, you've got Henderson, Nagata, and Talaski, and then manufacturing, D&B, Harmon, and then trademarking those. So this is a certificate that we currently have. Provided the link for you there. If it's something that you're interested in, you'll note that you've already got under your belt. You're starting down 3 of the credits, and if you successfully complete 531, you've got 6 of the credits. So it might be interesting to take 520 or 521 to complete out and round out that that acoustics certificate. Research, you've got NASA does a big portion of it, and then you have the Acoustical Society of America, which we have a school chapter here. So if you're looking to add something to your resume and get into acoustics, compete at a national level, touch base with me, and we'll get that set up. Let me move my mouse out of there. Consulting and design. This is my wheelhouse. This is what I have done for 20 years. You have Henderson Engineers, and you'll see Mr. Teal up there in the top right in the example. He is also an acoustics alum from KU, but a K-State graduate. You might recognize, if you're from the area of Lawrence or Kansas City, you might notice the Kauffman Center for the Arts. That is the Symphony Hall there, and that was designed by Nagata. And then you have Tulaski, which did Millennium Park, the Pritzker Pavilion to be exact. So that's an outdoor facility that replicates what CSO has indoors. So that trellis system was made for those loudspeakers for that function. So it's a good case of form and function following each other. Manufacturing, outside of research, manufacturing could be considered the largest, kind of where you slice it at. D&B Technologies have opportunities there. These are kind of the leading loudspeaker manufacturers at the moment. They have great pattern control in audio. You have Harman, and then you have Harley Davidson. So if you think of an example of when Harman, JBL, was bought up, they weren't bought up for their larger venue loudspeakers. They were bought up and combined because of their car audio. So car audio is much larger of an industry than professional audio or even acoustics. And then you have Harley Davidson. Lamborghini is another one that trademark sounds. They don't want you to grab your small 650 Kawasaki and make it sound like a Harley Davidson. And likewise, they don't want to. I'm just realizing now I'm taking up that screen. Likewise, Lamborghini doesn't want your VW sounding like their car. So these are all examples in the manufacturing world. Organizations: ASA, AES, Avexia or Infocom, NSCA, NAB, and NAM. Acoustical Society of America, we talked about that earlier. National website is posted, regional and student chapters, and then the KU chapter. So there's opportunities to do research, present at conferences, compete nationally on designs. It's a really great organization, focusing strictly on acoustics. There's a large diversity of what is under the Acoustical Society of America. You can see there noise effects, underwater physics, speech and hearing, psychology, biology, oceanography. All of those aspects fall under this. Then AES, this is the Audio Engineering Society, and this focuses on the audio and the audio engineering side of the industry. Basically, when you're designing a space, the technology that you're implementing in your space, specifically, it's becoming melded. The lines are blurred a little bit more than they used to be, because if it carries audio, it probably carries video now, but not all the times. There are some instances in spaces where you don't need video. You just need audio reinforcement, voice lift, for example. But at the Audio Engineering Society, this is your recording aspect. It's not the same as NOM, which we'll touch on here later, but this is complement kind of the in between Acoustical Society of America and National Association of Broadcasters and National Association of Music Merchants, all kind of tied into the same industry. AAVC, formerly Infocom, this is what we think of when we're in the architectural world. This is audio-visual and integrated experience. They're the producers of Infocom. They have third-party certifications for Certified Technology Specialist, and then designated D, designated I for installer, D for designer. And this focuses on bringing in one total solution, audio control and video. Also, you could add to that networking, but not so much that would cross over with BICSI or RCDD certification for structured cabling and routing your networks, getting signal from one server closet to another. That's a little bit outside of this, but you need to be aware of it, especially with the convergence of audio control and video being over IP. Not so much in the streaming aspect, but as a compressed digital audio format. But if you have an inkling and you think this industry might interest you, checking out AAVC and what they have set up for education, especially early on, that could be a feather in your cap to add to what sets you apart from others in your industry. NSCA, so when there was AES, that was more prominent, and then there was ASA, Acoustical Society of America, that was more prominent. You had a National Systems Contractor Association, and this took care of the other side, historically focused on install and audio design. So this went together with AES and went together with ASA. So Acoustical Society of America, Audio Engineering Society, and then the National Systems Contractor Association. That made your complete system in the days of analog. We're talking 20 years ago. Then AAVC came along, Infocom first, and then AAVC, who now runs it all. And they're offering third-party certification, so that if you, as a design team member, have a space that's heavy in audio video, this gives you kind of a one-stop shop to go shopping for members to add to your team. What companies are certified, who knows what they should know, and that's what AAVC is for. And so this is kind of pushed NSCA kind of out to the sideline, but it's still good to recognize that, especially if you're having projects go out for bid that have an audio video control component. If they're not AAVC certified with a CTSI or a CTS at the minimum, check that maybe they've been certified long ago under National Systems Contractor Association. NAB, this is National Association of Broadcasters, centered around broadcasting and broadcasting systems. If you're doing stadiums, if you're doing Broadway, if you're doing news or recording, you've got to interface and you've got to be aware and be abreast of what's coming out of NAB. These guys drive the industry. It's not 100% on them now. We'll see another one that's driving what people want in the industry, but you need to know what's coming out of this. It's good to keep abreast of it. It doesn't mean that you have to be an expert or go to the massive trade show that covers many, many floors and has everything from small black boxes that transmit audio and video over Cat5 to satellite trucks. But the 4K the HD and then 4K standards came out of this, and it's because they wanted to turn over. They wanted to go from a terrestrial broadcast aspect, go digital, so they could sell over those frequencies to the cell phones, so that we can run around and be tracked and access the internet on a whim. So this was the group that drove HD. HD didn't take off because everyone liked a better picture. HD took off because they quit broadcasting over those frequencies, so everyone had to upgrade the TV. And then people really liked 4K, 2K and 4K, but 8K is a little ways out there, but it's coming. If you've been to a show at NAB, you can see the $250,000 Sony displays that are giant and are in 8K. They're quite gorgeous. And then NAM, the National Association of Music Merchants, and this concentrates on music and the performance equipment. So basically, if you're doing a performance space, you need to know what's coming out of here. You're going to have to build systems and infrastructures that interface with the musicians and the gear that they have, and this is where it's coming from. So when you're planning for a venue that owner is only going to build once, you can't base it on only technology that is 5 years old, exists today. You need to look at and project out what's coming down the pipeline. So National Association of Music Merchants is a good place to start. And then others for consideration, touch on when we go over mechanical systems, but ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. You can tell this is an engineering group because the name is very long. There's their website there, and it's HVAC design, installation, and repair. There is a chapter over in Leonard Hall with the architecture engineering group. They have a ASHRAE group. But there are standards that come out of this. Just note that the standards that deal with acoustics primarily are code, so they're minimum. And it doesn't necessarily mean that if you design to an ASHRAE standard that you're going to have a successful room. It could just mean that it's the bare minimum and it's not as bad as it could have been, but doesn't mean it's the best of what it could be. And then CES, 10 years ago, the Consumer Electronics Show, maintained by the Consumer Technology Association. You wouldn't care if you were designing a space, if you were designing a classroom, designing a performance hall, designing a lecture hall, designing a distance learning classroom. You wouldn't care what was coming out of CES. But now everyone's interpretation of what they're getting for a system is competing with Google Homes, Alexas, and devices like that. The board members in a company for a boardroom you're designing, they probably have 2, 4, or 8K large displays, maybe projectors at home. So they expect for a professional system for it to be above and beyond what they have at home. And now with bring your own device, you need to keep tabs of what's out there. Are they bringing an Apple device in? Are they bringing an Android device in? Are they on 3G, 4G? Which Wi-Fi are they on? Can they do BC, G, or H? Those are all things you've got to take into consideration, and you have to build for 3 to 4 releases ago, and then what's coming out in the future. And this changes what's shown at CES is probably outdated. So CES is usually mid-January, 1st of February. By July, the stuff is on the streets, in the hands of everyone, and being phased out by December for the next product cycle. So if you have projects that are on the boards for 2 or 3 years, whatever you spec 2 years ago probably doesn't exist when it goes out for bid. So you want to be aware of that. So that wraps up our acoustics fields and organizations. Looked at academic research, consulting, design, manufacturing. Looked at the organizations: ASA, AES, Infocom, NSCA, NAB, and NOM. And these are things that you should be aware of. And there's opportunities, especially for students, and to build your skill set outside of the classroom in each of these organizations. So if you think something interests you, piques your interest, it's definitely worth coordinating with me if you have questions. But most of the information is out there, right? We all have access to the same information. It's just how we use it, and see what opportunities are out there. So to end on this, it's kind of our first assignment. It's still participation, but making sure that we can stay in contact throughout the course. You need to send me a participation email, and there's 5 components for every email: recipient, subject, opening, body, and closing. So basically, if you don't have a recipient, you don't have an email, so you can dismiss the other 4 if you don't have a recipient. In this case, I need you to send me an email, and my email's in the syllabus if you haven't already contacted me, and have my email. If you have contacted me, just send me the email. And in the subjects should be clear. It doesn't need to be a epic novel of you writing what's in the email, right? I shouldn't read the subject and then read the email and they be equivalent. It's enough to know what I'm getting ready to read, and that it's important enough to read. And remember, just in my day-to-day, I probably get 150 on a slow day, so like a Saturday, anywhere up to 500 emails a day. And this isn't like spam emails. These are manufacturing updates, products, projects, students, instructors, university, right? And so it needs to be clear on reading that subject due. I need to spend the time to read it and catch up on it now, or something I can do later. And then an opening should always address who you're emailing. If I get an email and I go through the subject, I deem it necessary to review now and read. If it's not addressed to me once I get to it, then I assume it wasn't sent to me, and that it does not need my immediate response. And so then I decide if it's interesting enough to keep reading. Is it a product update, an opportunity, or can I file it for later? And so in the body is the next portion. So you've got your recipient, subject, you've got your opening, and then make sure you properly address them. If they're a doctor, refer to them as doctor, sergeant, Mr., Miss. Whatever their title is, include that on there. Take that little extra time of who you're emailing, because that could be the difference of you being 1 out of 100 that's picked, because you demonstrated that you took the appropriate time to see if they had a doctorate, if they were a PhD, what their position was. The 4th part is body. This is all your pertinent information. This is why you're sending the email. And in this email, I need you to send me 1 acoustical experience you've had, acoustic, audio, control, video field that you have the most interest in that we went over briefly, society, organization in one of those that you have the most interest in or could be currently involved in. And then your closing, close with your email so it's easy to reference. And you're going to ask, well, why would you have my email? Why don't you just respond? Well, if you're applying for a position, for an internship, for a job after graduation, and it's forwarded, you don't want them to have to hunt after they read your name. And if they want to respond to you and bring you in, you want to make it easy for them. So your closings should have your email with your name and any other pertinent contact information. So it's all in one spot. Send that email to me with those components by end of day. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm excited to see what your experiences are and what interest you all have on there. And then I will get those reviewed, responded to, and posted. All right. Have a good day.